Good evening, everybody, and good evening if anybody's watching us online. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from September 21st, 2022.
So moved.
Motion made by Brendan, seconded by Alicia. Are there any comments, any changes? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Passes unanimously. Thank you. And now we're up for public comment. Is there anybody signed up? Anybody online? Okay, thank you. So we'll move right into board chair's report. My only thing that I want to say is that Ilda and Paula got in touch with me, and they can't make it tonight. They both have good reasons why they can't be here this evening with us. So I'm not sure about Mark. Did Mark get in touch with anybody? Well, maybe he'll waltz in. We do have a quorum, though, and I would just like to point out that we're still the reason we have a quorum so much more easily right now is that we're still one person short on the Board of Ed, and we're waiting for an appointee to fill that empty seat. So we'll move on to superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. Okay, the first item on my report is the attendance and discipline comparison between 21 and 22. Although it's early on, we appear to be trending in the right direction in most of our schools. We know that we had the issue at the high school that has directly impacted their student attendance. I am reporting out that each of our schools continues to use their attendance teams and has a lengthy process for tracking student attendance, and they are working on increasing student attendance just about every day, so we're moving in the right direction. As part of our leadership retreat this summer, school discipline and getting everyone on the same page for how we respond to discipline was part of our summer learning, and we have also started the Leadership Discipline Committee, which is a smaller group of leaders who are hoping to really help the larger group to calibrate our practices around school discipline and to eventually develop a district position statement on school discipline, so everyone's on the same page about what we believe and how we carry out consequences and incentives and all the things that we do to improve school culture in general. I don't know if there's questions or any comments or...
Does anybody have any questions? If it's right now, before we move on. Katina, Brendan, Alicia, Mary?
Just a comment that I think is a great idea to have that smaller group and look district-wide so there is some, parity among the schools.
Thank you. We are working on it for sure. Next item on the report is just a basic update on Windham Middle School. We feel like they're off to a great start this year. Today, even though I noticed that the date that Mr. De La Brera gave us was October 10th, it was actually today, Wednesday, October 12th. They had their first meeting. I have not had a chance to connect with Carlos yet to get the details, but the middle school improvement committee will be meeting monthly, and as you know, board members have been invited. The first two meetings have been... Today was the first. November 9th from 3 to 4 is the second. And we are working on trying to stagger the meeting times so that we can include as many stakeholders as possible, board members, SGC members, and any Windham Middle School staff that are interested in attending. Right now they have about 100 students attending their after-school programs, and they had a pep rally last week that I'm told was very successful. And as you saw from their data, their student attendance and discipline data are moving in the right direction. So far, so good. Any middle school questions?
Could you remind for the public and other folks if 100 students in the middle school are attending after-school programs. How many are total students in that school?
So there's about 600 students in the school, so
Okay.
a little less than
20%?
20%, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's a large number compared to previous years, so we're happy to see that. And they've just started. They intend to add additional after-school clubs, so hopefully we'll be engaging more and more kids as we move forward. The next item is the proposed board meeting locations. As you know from the board retreat, we had a discussion about potentially moving the board meetings to our new location, which is the core and AWP site on North Windham Road, our new school location. And there at least was some concerns raised about that. So we've offered 3 options for the board to discuss when we get up to discussions. Option 1 is for the meetings to remain in this space until the high school auditorium or the library and media center becomes available to us. Option 2 is to move all the board meetings to the new space, as we talked about at the board retreat. And option 3 would be a combination of sort of moving the board meetings around every 3 to 4 months. The issue is that all the equipment that you see off to the side would need to be moved around with us. So that's why we can't just simply move the meetings. It really has to be in one location, or at least in one location for a few months at a time, because all that would need to be shipped out. So we'll discuss that in discussions. The next item is good news, really, for Windham Public Schools. The State Department of Ed just recently released their approved reading programs. There were 5 programs approved by the state of Connecticut, and we actually have one of them. And only either 11 or 12 districts in the entire state are actually currently using the programs, which I know has caused quite a problem, as you can imagine, with 150 plus districts now needing to look at their reading program and meet the requirements of the approval. We don't have to do that in Windham. Ours has been approved. So I was actually at the professional development yesterday, along with Dr. Ware, on the science of reading. And so everyone had lots of questions to ask about our program because it was one of the approved programs. So that's a win for us. So I'm just happy to report that to the board.
Are you clairvoyant or something?
I don't know.
Or what kind of poll did you have with the state?
I wish I could say it was me. It's a really good program. I mean, I helped to bring it here as the assistant superintendent, but it met all the requirements that the state was looking for. So it's a good list to be on.
Can we celebrate that? Can we tell parents and make a big cheerleading thing about Windham?
Sure. I want to wait because there's a little bit of a backlash because of the high number of districts that aren't. So I just want to wait a little while before we blast it out there, just in case anything changes. Just in case. So we just wait a little bit longer, but we're secretly celebrating. All right, last but not least on my report is just the update that was brought to the School Planning and Design Committee last week, which is the capital improvement project funds and the rationale as to why some of the projects might not have been finished and why there's still money in the accounts. I know many of you were on the meeting with us when we had the discussion, but if there's any questions.
And of course, anybody's invited to attend the School Planning and Design Committee meetings on a monthly basis or occasionally to hear any more about this.
Okay, well, that's all I have, although I know we're going to address enrollment data and benchmark data. Mr. Weathers is going to do the honors this evening. That's all I have for my report right now.
Any questions from any of the board members on what we just heard about before we move into the discussion items? Okay, so
Mr.
Neil,
Weathers,
you're
you're
on.
Good evening. So we'll start with a very, very large spreadsheet. So,
And you have it in smaller form, very small, in your packet, but it's also on the screen behind you, which I know is really odd because...
and if the board has any preference when they want to start, I usually start after Barros was fully K-8. but this is the enrollment by grade report since 2016-17 school year. The dates these enrollments are taken are always October 1st, because that's what the state goes by, October 1st. And our current 22-23 is our unofficial numbers. Usually in February at some point, we get the official counts, so some of these could always be within a couple students off, depending when a student officially was registered in the PSIS computer system, which talks to the state every evening. What conversation they say overnight, I don't know, but they talk to each other and register our enrollment. That's my enrollment humor for the evening. We have, you can see over time the different grade levels. Pre-kindergarten actually is our 3-year-olds and our 4-year-olds, and students that are in early Head Start as well. It's all of those ages. It's not one specific age level. Their enrollment fluctuates a little differently because it's based on available slots and staffing, not necessarily not always necessarily influenced by enrollment trends or population. You can see down below, I did a section of grade band levels, meaning pre-kindergarten, grades K to 5, grades 6 to 8, and grades 9 to 12. That included all buildings, right? And in those, you could see that in those K to 5 schools, or those grade level bands, you could see that we have basically the pre-K has fluctuated. The elementary grades have decreased by about 200 students over that time. Our middle grades have increased and decreased, and then our high school population actually right now is the highest it's been in a long, long time, and I think that'll increase for a couple more years minimally, and hopefully even greater than that once the building's in place. The K to 5 schools, that should say technically not including those. That's Sweeney, Natchog, North Windham, and Windham Center. Those are our 4 K to 5 elementary schools, and that is, you could see the change in population. In 16-17, it was 1335, and it decreased to 1149 over that time. So that's just a summary. Would anyone have any questions before I move to the next slide?
It's very helpful for you to put those bands of grades together, total for the district for us. That's nice. Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, I figured that would help because that does include, Barrows. Okay, next slide, please. So district enrollment by school or program. There's some footnotes over there because some of our specialized programs have moved to different buildings. So just trying to note where they've been. If you go across the top, for example, assisted work program was its own facility located at the high school. It says 0 in 22-23, but that's not true. It is now down at the bottom where it says AWP/core/rise. They're all located at the same facility. You may have heard it referred to as CARE, right? So all those students are located in the same building. So some of the programs have changed. I'm just using the official titles that the state has listed. And the reason I kept them where they are is to make sure you see the total enrollment adds up to those numbers. If you start moving around, I just wanted to put how they were reported to the state over the years. For example, Windham Early Childhood used to have a program at Tuckey Road, at Barrows for a couple years, and then that moved to the Early Childhood Center. So there's been fluctuations. You can see the different changes. So even within the buildings, one thing to keep in mind is different programs have been moved at different times, so it could fluctuate some of the numbers you see. And you can see our total enrollment pre-K to 12 is 24 greater than it was the year before. You could see the bulk of that difference is coming from the high school and the pre-K enrollment increases. Any questions on this information?
Just speak up if you have a question. Okay, thanks, Neil.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is just our classroom counts. We started this a few years ago and just like to keep up to date on this. what our school offices do, because sometimes there's a lag in each school, but we have a Google sheet that our school offices update every first day of the month. During the month of September, it's a very fluctuating month, so we ask them every week or so to do it. So what you will find is, our schools, some of our schools have up to 4 classrooms. You can see that North Windham does, per grade level in some cases. And so we color-coded, purple are our Dos Rios classrooms, the green indicates our Compañeros classrooms, and then the rest of our classrooms are, and we have the grade level totals. So Natchog, as of October 1st, had about 270 students. North Windham, I think that white font is saying 423 students. And then our next slide, we had 200, sorry, I can't see the white font. I typed it, but I can't see it. 233 students for our Sweeney, and I believe 225 or 6 for our Windham Center, maybe a little lower. But like basically, in the 220s. So,
223.
thank you. All right. Time for glasses. All right, so those are our 4 K-5 schools, and then the last slide is just our current grade levels. One note, and I didn't say this in the other enrollment counts, I was surprised by the kindergarten total. I know that we've had a slightly declining enrollment, but that was seemed low. I told Dr. Youngberg, this is no scientific theory by any means. I was wondering if it's kind of hidden. I think last year our enrollment was a little higher because families were keeping kids home the previous year due to COVID, so students on the cusp, so that the following year that seemed like a greater difference than maybe it would have been. I'm not sure, I'm just throwing it out there, but that's relatively lower than you could see we've seen in a few years. But that is what our number is currently.
Neil, is there any way we can ask parents who are enrolling their kids if they're, did they wait? Did they?
You know what? Let me think about how we could poll our families in those primary grades. That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, it's voluntary. They don't have to tell
Right,
us.
but we can maybe glean something. That's a good point. Thank you. Any questions?
If there's no questions on enrollment, you can go right into benchmark assessments.
Okay. So I have the iReady data on this chart here. This is our iReady report we get off the platform. Just so everybody knows, typically in the fall assessment, because you're going to see a lot of red below grade level, the way the iReady measurement stacks up, it measures students when it says mid above grade level or early on grade level. That means the students are performing at grade level already. So typically speaking, if you're in first grade in September, you're not performing what you would be in June. So just want to make sure that's clear. That's why the bars increase over time. Some assessments don't do that. They change their cut scores with the passing markers, so it looks a little different. This is a case of where they start off with the end of year goal in all 3 measurements, and you'll see that as we progress through the year.
So they really want to see it. We want as much green
Correct.
as possible, and we want the red bars to be as small as possible.
Correct. And just to show on the next slide, this is 2021. There could be some school differences, but they're relatively, for the most part, within a couple percentage points of where they were last year at the beginning of the year in the benchmark. And one note, too, is that last year in the far right column, you can see there's a number, like Barrow says 535 out of 537, which was really good last year. Some of the schools had some greater differences. That's the first number is the number of students that took the test out of how many students that could. Our performance rate was a little better actually this year than last year if you added them all up. So I just wanted to, which makes sense because there was more students out due to COVID last year during testing. And then our next 2 slides is iReady Fall Math for 2022. And then you can see the last year, and typically at the beginning of the year, the math cut scores for on grade level are a little, are lower than the reading on level. That has historically been the case. And then the other piece of information, which I will leave you on a cliffhanger because we have it in the blurb, we will be sharing. Our high school just took Horizons PSAT data. We'll be sharing that at the next meeting that just came out. They actually looked at it at the PD day, but I'm going to break that down and share it with you. It's the teachers are really speaking very highly of it, which is always good because they're the ones that are experts with it. But it's basically 3 practice SAT takes, and we have it by grade 9, 10, and 11, and I'll share that at the next meeting.
Thank you for sharing that. It's open for discussion now. I will just start out by saying that I know it's very sobering to see these numbers, and we have had a tough couple of years, which haven't helped. But I think it might be helpful for the superintendent and or you, Neil, to sort of weigh in about how we're approaching this work that needs to be done, so that people reading about this or watching this conversation will have some sense of where we're going, what we're doing.
Sure. So ultimately, we know that what moves student achievement data is adult practice, improvements to adult practice. So we are trying, as a leadership team, to make sure that everyone on the leadership team understands what high quality instruction looks like, sounds like, and feels like, and that we're able to articulate that to the entire staff and ensure that our teachers have all the tools that they need to improve practice. So all of our groups, whether it's the Science of Reading group that's working on early literacy, whether it's the group of leaders that's working with Isabel Stevenson, whether it's my leadership team just having discussions around mini observations, we're really trying to move our energy, sort of put all of our energies into how to improve things that are happening in our classrooms. It's also why we're tracking all the attendance and the discipline data, because we know that those 2 data points speak to how well schools are functioning, sort of the well-being of the school. We're also trying to get our schools to put in additional opportunities for kids to want to come to school, so additional clubs, events like the pep rally, for example, things that make kids excited about school so that we can get them, into the building and get them functioning at the highest level possible. So we are really trying to improve instruction across the district. I'm going to just say it, at the ESSER funds have helped us a great deal in that we've been able to make investments in instructional supplies, in professional development, in just some of the basic things that we might have been lacking in IT, for example. We've been really trying to be smart in the investments we're making because the district has been behind for a very, very long time, and things have been neglected for a long time. So we've always had a fairly decent PD offering, but I'm not sure we've always had all the supplies and sort of the bells and whistles. So our focus is instruction. It has to be what happens in the classroom, or nothing's going to happen with that student achievement. So that's sort of all the, in a nutshell, the things we're really focused on.
And what would you say is the receptivity to this focus on that instruction and the experience in the classroom? And the second question I have is, what do you think is the realistic timeline to begin to see the ship turn?
It's like the Titanic, so it's taken us a long time. So I think for the most part, our staff is receptive. We have an amazing group of dedicated professionals. My focus has really been with the leadership team, with the intent that they're going to take it back to their schools and engage their staff around the process. The mini observations, we're sort of just getting them up and running now. They're non-evaluative, but it's supposed to be increasing the number of conversations that are going on around the district about instruction. So I think the more we do of those, the more receptive the staff will be. When they see it's not a gotcha, we're really trying to improve practice and build this sort of sense of team around it. What was the second question? The realistic
The
timeframe, thank you.
realistic timeline on turning the ship, because it isn't something you can just like see immediate results.
Yeah, I think we should be seeing it, minor improvements every day. That's sort of the way I look at it when I ran my schools. We should be doing something every day toward our goals, but actually seeing the needle move and significant growth takes a little bit longer. I would love to see that our January benchmark data is a few percentage points out in front of where it was the year before, and then our spring benchmark data is a few percentage points out in front of where it was the previous spring, and sort of always taking a look back at where we were and setting our goals moving forward. I think the science of reading work and the focus on early literacy, if we can get that right in kindergarten, first and second grade, then the district will be in a much better place as we move those kids through the grade levels. I hope to see some gains this year, not only on our internal benchmarks, but on the state assessments. So I would say, if all goes well, we're going to see some improvements by the time the state assessment data comes back to us in June or July.
Thank you. I don't want to hog up the conversation, but does anybody else have anything they want to ask about or talk about?
Oh, go ahead. Oh,
Mary, go ahead.
Well, Neil, did you want to add something?
I was just going to add two quick things. One, when Tracy's talking about, you don't want to see like just one big year of massive growth, although it looks great. You want to see sustained, steady growth. That is one point I just wanted to say. And the other is, Cammie's in the audience from Sweeney, and we had our PD day on last Friday, which was school-based, and the idea of that professional development session was to respond to the data, and there was different data sets. And actually, when I walked in, they asked me to present at Sweeney. Cammie was up there leading her school, and they're talking about chronic absenteeism. And it wasn't like telling the teachers; it was having a conversation with the teachers about how they can improve it. And I thought it went really well. And then even in my presentation, they asked really good, thoughtful questions. And I think when you're including them in the conversation, you agree on the goal. That's how you are more likely to be successful.
Thank you, and thank you, Cammie, for modeling a good approach. Were you going to say something, Tracy, before Mary's?
Just that the whole idea of engaging, the professionals in the work so you can step away and it still functions without you. That's the ultimate goal, like a classroom teacher. The goal is for the classroom to run. I never always say this. I don't want you leaving the children alone. Anybody listening, classroom teachers at home. But the idea is you should be able to step away, and if you've done your job well enough, your students know what it is they're supposed to do. So that's the goal of engaging all of the professionals in the work. It's not a top-down power over. It's sort of grown organically from within. So
Thanks. Mary?
Yeah, so I understand that how these ESSER funds absolutely are helping with the supplies, the PD, the IT, but so I see a sort of disconnect between, that acknowledgement and then the previous statement that it's all adult practice, and it's what adults are doing in the classroom, and the issue is they cannot be doing what other teachers are doing if they don't have the supplies, the PD, the IT over years. So, I would just like a little more nuance there, because it is putting a burden on teachers if they're supposed to be, raising the bar, but they don't have the tools, they don't have the funds. And it does also make me circle back to, our last meeting where we were looking at, how the new teachers and where positions are missing. And, the middle school still had 6 instructional coaches missing. So, to me, that is necessary to bring into the conversation. So saying it's the adults in the building doesn't seem nuanced enough to me. And I would also like to read a study about that, if you have any information or a book you can recommend, saying that that is the thing that's going to me, it does not take into consideration the complexities of education in general, but our district in particular. So I think that's something I would like more information about.
I will definitely get more information to share with you, Mary, because teacher efficacy is the driving factor behind student achievement, and there's multiple studies that have proven that. So I will get you the information.
Katina?
Yes, I am wondering, since we want to push the data up and have all our students succeed, how are the reading interventionists being used, and if at all, are we focusing on the middle group that is one grade below and not so much on the other kids? And I think that other kids need the same professional and support and intervention. So, like, I don't want us to just look at okay, how are we going to increase the data and focus on the majority of the yellow students and kind of forget to the end, to the red with little.
Neil is all excited to answer
Yeah,
you, Katina,
so-
so I'm going to let him.
So if you do that, it's actually not only is it for obvious reasons, I think you're trying to make not good practice, but our accountability index, while the more you increase levels, it helps you, but not in the way people think. Our accountability index is based on increased scale score, and what that means is every kid doing better on the test than they were in the past. And that's students that are in the green, yellow, or red, for lack of better, just picking the colors up there. And that's how the index actually improves. You theoretically could have scale score increase, kids doing overall all better all over the place, and not necessarily see significant increases in green, which we do want, and still see an improvement in the accountability index. So it kind of addresses that very thing. And the other major driver is growth. Most of a large portion of points go to students growing, and sometimes that growth may not be in 1 year getting all the way out of the red to green, but moving maybe from that darker red to the striped red, whatever it is, to the lighter red.
It did, and the leadership team, all the principals understand that.
So the goal is to move every student, as Neil just said. It's important for the accountability index, yes. Do we sometimes want to focus on a small group to get sort of a quick win, to get additional buy-in and get people to understand that what we're doing works? Yes, that sometimes happens as well. But our goal is for all kids to move. It's the only way to actually have sustainable change. You can't just focus on one group and expect it to be sustainable over time. It doesn't work like that. So yes, I believe we're all on the same page.
And that sustainable change, that experience that more than a small group of students have, translates into parent support and community support for the schools.
That's correct. So we keep, we're doing a lot of wonderful things here, but we haven't been able to prove it in the student achievement data. And I believe that once we do that, we are going to have more of the community's confidence in the things that we're accomplishing here. So, yes.
Does anybody else have any comments, questions? Go ahead, Mary.
I just have one more. When you spoke about the PD today with the chronic absenteeism, you meant the absenteeism of students. Is that correct?
That was the conversation. It was our chronic absenteeism. Is it related to the accountability index?
Right. It also sounded to me a little garbled, I guess, the way I heard it, because I just want to also say that it isn't the teacher's fault. I mean, this is a bigger problem, the absenteeism. So, there's a whole approach here that I do see that is being addressed. But again, we don't want to say, we're going to change one thing and everything else is going to also improve.
Thank you.
It's a team sport, right? It's more than just one group. Yes. Anything Anything else on this topic? Thank you very much for presenting this data. It's important that we keep looking at this and learning more about how we're working on moving forward together. So appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so the next item is proposed board meeting locations. Now, I want to remind the board that by sometime in December, we need to set our schedule for 2023 and send that to town hall so it can be posted. But we do need to come to some conclusion about where we're going to be meeting, and also I know that the superintendent is working on bringing some suggestions on scheduling of committee meetings and board meetings. Do you want to bring that into the conversation today?
I can just give you an idea. We'll probably be able to give you the draft for the next board meeting so that we can start the conversation. So we're trying to look at a potential schedule, obviously, that allows us to have the two board meetings we have each month, but allows us to also have committee meetings, because this board happens to so many of you come to each of the committee meetings, and we notice not only my staff, how often they're meeting, but all of the board members. So Holly's come up with a schedule that I think would free up everyone, would have at least a week off in a month that doesn't have any board meetings or committee meetings, which probably people would be very thankful for. And of course, it has to be vetted by all the committee chairs and all that, but we're at least going to make that proposal. So tonight we can have the discussion about where those meetings will occur, and then next board meeting will get you a draft to start the discussion about what that
That's
calendar
great.
might
So
look
we'll
like.
have time to finalize things before our December deadline. Okay. So, any thoughts on the proposal that's been put forward about meeting locations? Katina? Or Brendan, you had your hand up? You go first.
I did have one question. I know in talking about the AWP core location, I had heard a rumor at some point that if that was selected, a lot of the equipment could stay not only in the location but set up. Is that accurate?
So they're not currently using that space. They use the space behind the folding doors, but not that space, so it could technically live in that room. Yes.
I'm just looking for efficiency standpoint. Like
Right.
when it was a one-man show without hybrid meetings, I know how long it took to set up and break down and transport, and it's
a
tripled
lot.
in size and doubled in staffing. So
Thanks for that, Brendan.
So you asked the question,
I-
but do you have a personal opinion on this, especially as somebody who knows what it takes?
yeah, knowing what it takes, I mean, it used to take 60 to 90 minutes to set it up and about as long to take it down when it was a smaller setup. I imagine it's something similar now, if not a little bit more. Just for the efficiency of our staff, so we're not wasting them, constantly moving this equipment around. I would say if there's a place where we can have everything set up and living without them having to constantly do this, that's a win for our students, because that's more time they're spending on working on instructional and objectives than, the board meeting. Not that that's not important, but
Support for the learning in
Exactly.
the district. Yeah, that's a good point. Katina?
Yes, thank you for the comment on the efficiency, and I will be crystal clear and honest. I think we should stay here at the middle school, where is a central place where there's parking, there's light, and people can come if they wish to. I love the building where the core program is. It's beautiful. I think is on Route 6 and kind of isolated, and the efficiency of the equipment and the staff is important. And so I would say to find a place here in the middle school to put all that, so that this place is more welcoming and open to parents if they wish to come.
Anybody else have any thoughts on this? Mary?
I'll just say I agree with Katina, and, you know, I do appreciate Brendan's input. I just don't see where public could sit if we did go out to Route 6 in that space, but...
There's plenty of room in the space to set up chairs for the public. That wasn't the issue. I thought the issue was about parent access. Yes. Okay. Yeah, the room could definitely hold enough people for a board meeting.
It all depends on the way you set it up, right? When we were there for the retreat, it was set up one way, but it wouldn't necessarily take up that, the tables wouldn't necessarily take up that much space. Katina?
On the other hand, also, Windham Middle School is a place where parents know about, and the kids will come to Windham Middle School, or are in the middle school, or were in the middle school, and so the relational factor, I think is important.
Do you have a point of view, Alicia, on this?
Yes, I wanted to say to Katina, that's what I think too. I would love to stay here instead of moving to place, because this is something really big. So if we have a lot of people that want to come for the meeting one day, we have a lot of space. And another thing is, I remember when we talk about the retreat, I was like, where are we going? I don't know that place. So Katina took me there. So maybe if we do that, some of the parents are not going to be, it's going to be like I was. Where is that place? I never been there. So this is a perfect place. This or the high school, when the high school is done with the renovation, the high school or here?
The high school is mentioned in this proposal when it's ready. We may want to remind the public when that might be.
I'm not exactly sure, and it may be a moving target, so I can get back to you on that.
Okay. I'm sensing that, unfortunately, we're missing 3 board members. So maybe we don't need to make a final decision tonight, but I sense that we're leaning towards staying at this location and figuring out a way to make sure that the staff doesn't have to do a lot of moving of equipment. Does that seem okay to you and central office?
We've been doing it so far, so that's what the board prefers.
Yeah. I think we'll stick with that, but we'll take a final vote. Let's take action on that when we actually have the full complement of the board present. Does that make sense? Okay, so next month we'll see a proposed plan for a meeting schedule, and then we'll marry that with the location choice, and then have a final decision by December. We'll have a wedding by December. That sound good? Okay. Now we're. Oh, good, Mark. Great. Good to see you. We're sorry you had a little snafu. We're happy you're with us now. We're just on discussion item D around the policies. And I want to turn it over to Katina. Actually, basically she'll be giving the policy report by doing this, but I think, it's sort of eye-popping when you look at this list, and some of us may or may not remember that we had a discussion about how we'd like to handle situations like this. So I'm going to call on Katina as the chair of the committee to explain what we're dealing with here and how we might move these items to action items tonight, because it is not a special meeting and we could amend the agenda to do so. So go ahead, Katina.
So sometimes we fall back on practices without meaning to, because it's what we have been doing for years in terms of first readings and second readings, which we have had before. I will remind the board members that we had decided, and please, those members who come to the policy committee, add, that we had decided that once the discussion happened at the policy level, those policies that were repealed and replaced by the model policies could be automatically brought to the board for approval and voting on, and they didn't need a first or second reading, as well as the repealed ones. So it was kind of a snafu, if that word in English is appropriate. I wouldn't know how to spell it, by the way, but thank you.
SNAFU.
Okay, thank you. Anyways, so with that said, it was snafu that it says first reading, and it should have been put on our agenda as in the what is it called? The voting decision making
Action items.
items. So we apologize for that mistake. We met, we looked at these, they are ready for approval, and moving it to our special page where we are creating all the policies that we will have, that we have. Thank you. And
Thank you,
we
Katina.
apologize for the snafu, and now I can spell it.
Okay, so now I'd like to open it up to questions or discussion from board members, and then potentially we could entertain a motion to take all of these or some of these forward to the action item section of the agenda. So we'll just open it up. Does anybody have any questions about the actual policies and or suggestions about how we move forward?
I'll move that we add the approval of these policies to the action items of the agenda.
The entire
The entire set listed,
D 1 through
1 through 9.
9. Yep.
Yes.
Mary?
Oh, sorry, is that a motion he's making?
He's made a motion, so I need a second, then we can discuss.
Second.
Second by Katina. Now we're going to discuss. Mary?
Well, should we have the repeals in one motion and the acceptances in another, or does it matter?
Good point, Mary. I think we can have two motions then. The repeal and replaced, because the repealed alone will not be substituted by any policy. So, Brandon, would you make a friendly amendment to your motion?
I'll accept that friendly amendment.
Okay, and I'm seconded.
So the motion is to add all the repeal and replace policies to the agenda separately from the ones that are just repeal,
Which are the last two?
the last
Yes.
two. So the first 7 would be in one motion, and the second 2 would be in another motion, another action item.
Correct.
Okay. So there's that motion that's been, you've accepted those changes. There's a second to that. Now, do we need to now divide this into 2 different motions then?
Correct. So first we have to approve.
Right.
So first we have to approve this motion to move it to action.
Okay. And then when we add it to the agenda, we'll add it in 2 different items. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, parliamentarians. So let's vote on the motion that's on the table to add these in 2 separate motions onto the action items this evening, in 2 separate chunks onto the action items. All those in favor? How about you, Mark? Mark has his hand up. I can see it on the screen. Okay. So that's approved. So, and I guess we'll keep moving forward then. So on to committee reports. Katina, is there anything else you'd like to add to the committee report?
No, that was it. We are being efficient and effective.
Thank you. Any questions for Katina? Okay, on to school planning and design. Brendan?
Yeah. So we met last week. The only two things of discussion, the big one obviously was the Windham Center oil tank. The temporary tank is in place and hooked up, so we are all set to have heat for this heating season, which is good. We are still waiting for a timeline from the contractor as to when exactly they're going to remove the tank, since we are under order from the Department of Environmental Protection to have that out by the first Friday in November. So I know Dawn was following up on that and trying to get some more concrete answers instead of just we think what's going on. The other thing we talked about was the unspent capital improvement funds that we briefly touched on before. To summarize, there's about $3.7 million sitting out there unspent. About $3.2 million of that is earmarked for certain projects that just hasn't been expended yet, such as the North Windham roof being the largest portion of that. And that was the summary of our meeting.
Thank you, Brendan. Are there any questions? I just think for those of you who weren't at that meeting, we did acknowledge all the work that had to get done behind the scenes by staff and town folks and everybody to get this project through in the time limits that we had. So thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to action items. Before we can take action on A, B, and C, and we've also added the two separate action items on the policy changes, D 1 through 7 and D 8 and 9. And I also would like to entertain a motion to add approval of the Alliance and Priority School District Consolidated Grant application to the action items. That is something that was here at our places in our packets, and it was just an oversight that it wasn't included. Could I get a motion on that?
So moved.
So moved by Brendan. Seconded by Mark. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate so by raising your hands. Mark's hand is up. Motion approved. Thank you. So I just have to say, this is an aside, this is a perfect example of how you can have a hybrid meeting and actually be effective. And the town council is trying to figure out if they can do this. And I told them, just come to one of our meetings and see that it can actually be done. So the first item for action is acceptance of a donation from Mr. Denton Gates, otherwise known as Denny Gates, and family. And this is acknowledging that the Windham Public Schools has received a donation of office furniture valued at approximately $51,618.72 from Mr. Denton Gates and family. And the furniture is located at the new core AWP building and has helped staff and students make a smooth transition to a new facility. I'll entertain a motion to pass this.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Brendan to accept this, seconded by Mary.
Second.
Any discussion? Except that it's an extremely generous gift. Thank you to Mr. Gates
Thank you.
and family. All those in favor of accepting this gift? Good, I'm glad we accepted it because we're already using it, so it would have been hard to tell Suzanne that we had to take it all away. And I'm hoping that we can get a thank you letter sent to Mr. Gates and family Thank you. Next item is approval of a field trip to Old Sturbridge Village by Windham Center School. I'll entertain a motion to approve this field trip.
So moved.
Oh, moved by Mark, seconded by Katina. Any discussion?
Is it the entire school attending or certain grades only?
I believe it's fourth grade.
Boy, I wonder how much Sturbridge Village has changed since we went on school trips there when I was a kid. Not much.
Well, the village was new back then.
Yes. Now that I'm going to be a senior citizen in January, yes. It was still inhabited, Mary said. There were not actors there. Okay, all those in favor of the motion that's on the floor, please raise your hand. Okay, unanimously approved. Next thing is acceptance of the ESEA federal grants, Title I and Title II, and that information was in your packets. Who would like to make that motion?
So moved.
So moved by Brendan.
Second.
Seconded by Alicia. Any questions about this? I don't know why we would not want to accept these grants. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. Mark's raised his. Okay. Unanimous. Now we're going to have action on the policy changes D 1 through 7, the repeal and replace model policies. Who would like to make that motion?
So moved.
So moved by Katina. Seconded by Alicia. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. Okay, Mark's hand is up. We're all unanimous. Oh, it's a contentious board meeting tonight. The next one is action on policy changes D 8 and 9, which are actual straightforward repeals. I'd entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Unanimous. Thank you. And then the final action item is approval of the Alliance and Priority School District Consolidated Grant application. Who would like to make that motion?
Moved.
So moved by Mark,
Second.
seconded by Brendan. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hands. Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. So that's it for action items tonight. You have one thing you want to say before we go to public comment?
I do. I forgot to mention that all the board members have this little brochure in front of you. This is a brochure about summer learning that was funded with ESSER funds that CAPS, the Connecticut Association for Public School Superintendents, put together. And on page 19, Windham's summer program were highlighted. So I wanted to just celebrate that we were one of the districts highlighted in this publication. So you can read through it. It's a celebration. As you know, we've used the ESSER funds to triple the number of students we offer summer school to, and really trying to re-engage students around having fun and learning. You know, joyful and productive is sort of the term I use with my leadership team. So we were written up. We're on the good list. Just wanted to share with everyone.
Actually, only 19 or 18 programs got featured in the state. Well, congratulations to everybody who had a hand in that, and so happy for the students that were able to participate. Thank you for pointing that out. And now we're on to public comment. Is there anybody who would like to speak during public comment? Anybody online? Okay. And nobody in person? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move, we move.
The meeting is adjourned at 8 p.m. Thank you.